Hello and welcome to Through the Mist with me, your host. This is a Void and Verse theory podcast where we look at the law and try to understand how it all works. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the world at war. Yeah, so welcome back everybody. Episode 3. How's everyone doing? Everyone's doing alright? You're over there at your end? Your end of this? Everyone's doing fine, I'm guessing. I don't know. No one ever talks to me. It's sad. Welcome back, episode 3. Yeah, today we're talking about the wars. The world wars. The world war, just one of them. Just talk about the second one in particular. We'll get onto that in a bit. First of all, housekeeping! So, I want to mention again that if you have any ideas about episodes that you would like to see me talk about, or any ideas, thoughts on episodes in the past, get in touch. Either through Instagram at through_mist or email through.t.mist@gmail.com. Either or, don't care really, but it makes it more of a conversation, doesn't it? You say things, we can talk about it. Big old conversation, everyone gets a voice. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I've now got a rough schedule of when episodes are released. It's roughly going to be one a month. However, there probably won't be any in August because I'm going away where I have no internet for a long period of time. So I won't probably do one until September. But, you know, if you follow the Instagrams, I'll post things up there, I'm sure, at least at some point, just so you know I still exist. So, theory time. Yeah, so as mentioned like a few seconds ago, today's theory is all about World War II and how the heck the Peugeot books and things said in the series is line up with this all. Because, man, so this one's a bit of a fun one to research and put together because, man, war's complicated, okay? War is extremely complicated. World War II doesn't really have a starting. Well, it has a starting point, but the reason for it happening in the real world is partly because of how World War One ended, and then if you look at the reasons World War One started, it's because some dude was assassinated in Austria-Hungary, I think. I'll look that one up and get back to you like in 5 seconds. I'm back. No time's passed for you, but I'm back. Austro-Hungarian throne. So yeah, I was pretty spot on. Before they got split up into different countries, the Austria-Hungary area. Anyway, back to the theory. Yeah, so it was complicated. It was very, very hard to work out how this all lined up. So as I go on, I'll probably describe it more. But let's start where I always start and gather the bits of information that we know from the Peugeot books, the very basic stuff. World War II was a fight between the allies of Zeus and Poseidon versus the Axis of Hades. Allies and Axis, the real word size. And we know that the very minimum, the end of the war had something to do with the Great Prophecy, the Percy's Great Prophecy, because the war ended, the Pact of the Big Three started. So the prophecy and the pact, kind of the world burning, and they all lined up, and it was tickety-boo, I guess. No, it wasn't really tickety-boo, but then the end of the war put in motion the Great Prophecy that then took place 73 years later, something like that. In this, I'm just going to focus on the Greek side, and I would presume it's a world war, so we can think that a lot of different parts of pantheons, that's the word I was looking for, different pantheons took part in this war. However, we're going to focus on the Greek side, and I'm going to say it wasn't really a Roman war because it hasn't, since it was like the ending things linked with the Great Prophecy, that only the Greeks had as far as we know. We don't know what the Romans were told or why all of a sudden, I presume Jupiter's and Pluto's kids mainly just stopped turning up because they said Neptune wasn't really big over there. It's like what did the Romans go? Jason suddenly appears and like, that's a son of Jupiter. And he's like the only one. He's the first in however many years. It's like what? What? Do you know what's got? We never find out what they were told. And so yeah, that's going to be the basis of this. Is that we're going to look at Greek side and how the heck Zeus and Poseidon ended up facing off against Hades. Real world origins now, I guess. So in Europe, there's like two to three start dates for the actual war. War in Europe, which is where I would say most of this, the Pojo side of the war, happened when Germany invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939, with 2 days later, the UK and France declaring war on Germany, on the Germans. And there's that famous radio over this side of the pond. There's a famous radio broadcast that Chamberlain did. Hello, we are now at war with Germany, and that's like basic. That's the start of war for us. I don't know why I went. Anyway, in the Pacific side of the world, on the Eastern Front, I guess it's not the Eastern Front. I don't know what they would call it, because there was the Western Front and the Eastern Front. The Eastern Front was the Russian side. Western Front was the France side of Germany, and then that's what I know as the Western Eastern Fronts. But there might have been, I don't know what the name is for the other one. Anyway, that started either with the Second Sinko-Japanese War on the 17th of July, 1937, or it started when the Japanese invasion of Maluku on the 19th of September 1939. But as I said earlier, we're going to ignore the Asian front. That's probably the best way I could describe it. We're going to ignore the Asian front because Greeks, they're from Europe, Romans, they're from Europe. So we can presume that the West, and they follow Western civilization, so we can presume that any conflicts happening in the East were either other pantheons got involved in, and or any Westerners over there that came over will just, because it's a world war and the countries were at war. War's bad, war's scary. These wars were the worst. So, as I mentioned, the war politically, the war came about because, so the reason like Germany invaded Poland, for example, when certain nations felt untreated by the outcomes of World War I. The wars, the biggest of those negative feelings were coming from Germany, and certain leaders in Germany used that negativity to prosecute other people that had absolutely nothing to do with the state of the world at all, you know. So the final few plays that led to the war, so like the final few steps that led to that invasion of Poland, were in 1939, the Germany and Soviet Union made a non-aggression pact where the two countries agreed to take no military action against each other for the next 10 years. And that Germany went, oh, great, now I'm going to have no problem like the First World War, where I had to fight wars on two fronts. We've just got, so I can ignore Russia and their existence. Apparently, how Russia ended up back in the war is they went, Poland does not exist. So you invaded us, I guess. I don't really know. I didn't look at that side up too much. But the United Kingdom and France had guaranteed their support for Polish independence in April 1939, and they formed the Franco-British Pledge to Poland. And that alliance is what led to France and the UK declaring war on Germany after they sent an agreement and Germans didn't respond. And in there it said, if you don't respond or whatever, we're at war.
This is London. You will now hear a statement by the Prime Minister.
I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
It's like that's how the real war started. And man, war is such a sad thing, isn't it? This is a great topic to talk about on a rainy day. It's raining outside for me currently. Well, it's just stopped actually, but it's still wet outside. Anyway, so where were the gods? This is my rambliest episode yet. Woo! Gods, where were the gods? Right then. Guess it's time to look at how this actually ended up being a war between Poseidon and Zeus, with being the allies, so United Kingdom, France, Belgium, don't know really, and the US. I would say UK, France, and US are the main three. However, so this is where my brain started to get complicated about all this, because the timeline is very hard to put together, because we know from canon there's very little information. As I said, wars are complicated, so it's hard to line things up. But so if we go back to the first episode, by the start of World War I, we can say about 70 years, if we agree on what's said in the first episode, that the gods had been based in the States. And the US as a country didn't join the war until 1941. And just reading from the books and stuff, I've always imagined that most of the demigods are American. There are some international half-bloods, like there's the Brazilian guy in Toa, and then Hermes mentions he has some kids in some other countries in The Last Olympian. Most, I would say, would be in America, because that's where their seat of powers are. And like in, I suppose, Sun spoiler coming up, I guess, Alaska is out of the realm of the gods, specifically Alaska, which is weird. Don't understand that quite. Might be because it joined the Union really late. Who knows? Or that could be Scotland. Could that be Scotland? Huh. Because, like the Roman Empire never got to Scotland. And maybe because that's the most northern part of the United States, or the American Empire, I guess. They never got Scotland. Or is Canada Scotland? No, Canada's not Scotland, because Franklin's Canada. Alaska's Scotland. Fun thing that I've just thought of there. Great. What was I saying? Yes, half-bloods. How did the half-bloods start fighting? I think so. I looked through the books again, and I tried to come up with the best timeline I could. So from Hades' quotes in The Last Olympian specifically, because it's just kind of a bypassing thing said in the first book. So Hades says, "The war in Europe has turned the gods against me. A prophecy has been made. My children are no longer safe. Poseidon and Zeus have forced me into this agreement. None of us have to have demigod children again." So we know that something happened with regards to the European war, and we know that this is Poseidon and the European side of the World War. This is also a great reason to ignore Asia, but I found this out after I decided to ignore Asia anyway. Order of notes, I guess, and me not reading through them and working things out. Oh, rambly Owen. Stop being so rambly. Yes, anyway, so something to do with the European war that went, Hades, we hate you. Who knows what? It could have been a very minor thing for all we know. But apparently they didn't like something about the war. And we know that this is all happening. The great prophecy has been foretold at this point, because that's also part of the pact. And another quote from it is, "Maria, please, I told you, Zeus gave me a deadline of last week to turn over the children." So we know that, I'm spoiling Pojo, but I feel like everyone's read it. I gave spoiler warnings at the start of the other two episodes, but I've realised it's kind of stupid, because I'm going to finish this thought before I go to new thought. So, we know that the prophecy has been foretold during the war. Not at the start of the war. During the war, the great prophecy was foretold. Percy's great prophecy. Then they came up with the Pact of the Big Three while the war was still happening. It hadn't quite finished yet, but it was... And then Hades... Because there's been at least a week since all that happened, I would say. Who knows how quickly they came up with the idea of the Big Three. So I guess the next thing to do is look at who joined in when. how people started to hate other people. This is the theory. This is the meat of the theory. This is the exact theory. A child of Hades was highly responsible for starting the war. So let's be honest, this was most likely Hitler in the Germany, or it could have been Benito Mussolini, Benito Mussolini in Italy, because Nico and Bianca Italian of Italian descent. So who knows? Maybe he was in the region. Hades just likes Italy as Hades, not Pluto. That's weird. Anyway, so the fighting was broken out. It wasn't necessarily broken out as a fight between the two sides. However, Hades' kids started the fight, and Zeus and Poseidon's kids were like, "No, we don't like that." And then at some point during the war, the great prophecy was foretold, and then Zeus and Poseidon forced Hades into this pact. I don't know how they forced him. And that pact obviously is they were not allowed to have any more kids. And they had to turn over all their kids that they did have to Camp Half-Blood, so they could keep an eye on all of them, so they knew at least when they turned 16 they could just ignore them. Or, as Hades says along the lines of, Zeus will kill all the kids before they reach 16. Specifically Hades' kids. Maybe Poseidon's as well. Yeah. But this may have taken a while. Come the pacts of the war between the children specifically might have started after the great prophecy was told. Like I said, this is very hard to come up with. Bianca and Nico, probably the youngest, and the others were probably of fighting age, and they were fighting against Poseidon and Zeus kids. So the end of the war, so the start of the war doesn't coincide with anything that's happening in the Greek world. But the end of the war coincides forcing of the pact, the capture, I guess we could say capture, getting the kids, demigods, to Camp Half-Blood, and that's when the war kind of just ends off like that. That's kind of how it all ends. Yeah, okay, that's everything. That's like all the thoughts. That was just a rambly thoughty one, but So, wrap up. This was a very complicated and weird thing to have to try and put together, because there's basically no canon information, and wars are complicated. Why they start are complicated. Why they end is a little simpler, I guess, but didn't really look at that, I guess. Final wrap up is, I think, that the war might not have started as a fight between the gods, but it did end as one. It was most likely not a pure Greek war, and other pantheons were affected, if not for the direct reason of there was this great prophecy. And we know that we do know that other pantheons thought in the war, because we see a flashback in the Kane Chronicles of Bess fighting Nazi zombies. Nazi zombies? Yeah, fighting Nazi demons in Nazi uniforms. Nazi zombies, not demons. Yeah. So before I finish off this episode, I guess, and do my outro thingamabob, when I was talking about all this and looking at all that, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if, let's be honest, Vic probably didn't think of this, but wouldn't it be cool if the Germans never had superiority in the air or on the sea because Zeus Poseidon. And so I did a bit of digging. I did a bit of digging and found that so it seemed by the end of the war, the US had naval superiority, and Germany never really won air superiority over the UK and the RAF, Royal Air Force, for anyone that doesn't know what that stands for, which is the British Air Force, I guess. Yeah, and we know that it's also true because there's also the great example of the Battle of Britain, where it was a purely battle in the air and Germany never won. We won that one. We did good. the other thought I've already mentioned, that what did the Romans did the Romans know about the pact? And if they knew about the pact, what do they think that meant when Jason appeared? It's a bit weird. Was the pact just a Greek thing? Are demigods of the big three more rare in Rome anyway? Who knows? We never find that out. When I see one book I want is like a Roman prequel. I want a Roman prequel just to understand their world a bit better, and specifically for things like that, and how the heck Jason ended up serving 12 years when he joined when he was a 2-year-old. Anyway, yeah, I'll recap the recap again. This was very hard to do. The war started, it started, but it ended as a war between Zeus, Poseidon, and versus Hades, and it ended due to the great prophecy being foretold, the pact of the big three, and Hades not liking it but losing, because 2v1, 2 will 9 times out of 10. Yeah, so that is this theory, I guess. Thank you for indulging this theory. If you have any comments on this theory, or theories of your own that you want me to discuss, email them through to through.t.mist@gmail.com, or you can follow me on the Instagram @through_mist. Follow the podcast, like, rate, subscribe, do all the things that you would need to do. I'm Bean Owen, and come back next time to try to see through the mist. What was that, Joe? You just rambled for like